Listeners and watchers, welcome back to the podcast. This is the second episode of season three, which is pretty cool. And I'm delighted to have Shelby Leigh here today as a guest. Shelby, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. It's so good to have you here today. I wanted you to on the podcast because I've recently, or maybe not recently, in the last few months, I suppose, come across your YouTube videos. I've been watching them extensively recently, and they're incredibly useful, informative content about marketing and about writing. And anyone who is a writer, especially a fiction writer, I think, or a poet like yourself, should definitely check out Shelby's YouTube channel and everything else that you have online. But Shelby, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, obviously, most of my audience are on Substack. They may not necessarily know who you are straight away, but I'm sure a lot of them have come across you, over the course of their time online. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for having me. And thanks for the kind words about the YouTube channel. It's been a really fun kind of passion project that has turned into more, but I really enjoy it. So, yeah, I'm Shelby Leigh. I am a poet first and foremost. So, I've been writing and publishing poetry books for the last 10 years almost, a mix of self-publishing and traditional publishing. So, I have experience with both. I started off self-publishing. My first couple of books. And then at the time, I was in college studying marketing and branding and really fell in love with it and was like, how can I take what I'm learning in school and apply it to my books that are selling okay? Like I'm trying. And so that was just really a work in progress, was figuring out how to market my books, how to treat them more like the products that they are, and kind of grow it into more of a business rather than a hobby, which is totally fine. But I wanted more. I wanted to really reach a lot of readers. So, after a few years of doing that, and my sales performing pretty well, I got a book deal to republish my second book. So, not super common, but a little bit more common in the poetry world. So, it was originally self published and then republished traditionally. And then I've published traditionally a couple more times since then, and kind of plan to go back and forth if I'm able to and have that opportunity because I really also love self publishing. But I like the opportunities that traditional publishing has given me as well. So that's a little bit about the author side. And then around 4 or so years ago, after getting so many questions from authors about like, how did you do this? How did you market your books? How did you grow your audience? All of that. I started Marketing by Shelby, which I've been doing for 4 years now, and have over 8,000 authors that I've supported in my various courses and programs. So it's really focused on just education, like helping you learn how to market your work, grow your audience, use content marketing to make more sales of your books. And I work with other creatives too, like or like artists and musicians and things like that. And so, yeah, that's when I started the YouTube channel and post free tips, advice, all of that. And it's just been so much fun and so fulfilling to get to do both things that I love a lot. So that's
Incre-
me.
Incredible, incredible. Yeah, I think I came across you initially. I think maybe on TikTok. You were posting maybe things there, and then I went on to YouTube because then you were posting stuff about how to post on TikTok on YouTube. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and your stuff's so useful. Like again, as I mentioned at the start, anyone who wants to learn how to do this kind of stuff as a writer, your stuff is so straightforward and just here's how you did it and here's the results and walking
Thank
people
you.
through those processes. So, I think it's really good that when authors share how they do things because a lot of the time I feel like we're all kind of floating around in this void and we're not exactly sure how to promote our work effectively. So it's good if other authors take the time to do that, especially for free as well, online. You mentioned there, Shelby, about how you were self-published initially and then you got a traditional publishing deal. How did that happen? So I'm just interested in this in general because I'm self-published and traditionally published with a small indie author or publication. So what did it look like for you whenever you sort of made that transition?
Yeah, totally. So I'm happy to share. I think my route to traditional publishing was a little bit different than usual. But yeah, so I self-published my first two books, and then my second book kind of took off, I would say, due to my marketing on Instagram and TikTok. And so an agent approached me, which is not typically how it works. You typically have to query. But just due to my sales, they reached out, and they're far and few between in poetry. There's not a lot of agents in poetry because it's a hard sell.
Mm.
So I started working with that agent. And then in the meantime, I had been submitting to traditional publishers. I had tried before, I had gotten rejections. And then we even pitched one, and then I got a rejection from that. But then when my book kind of spiked in sales, a big five reached out to me directly, which again is not typically how it works. Like my first thought was, this is absolutely a scam. So it was not. And my agent was able to work with them and negotiate and get that initial deal. So that's not typically how it works at
Mhm.
all. And I was very fortunate. And then since then, we pitched traditional publishers and got those deals. I've now worked with the same traditional publisher a couple of times. And then my agent and I aren't working together anymore. We just decided it wasn't the best fit. So I'm not working with an agent anymore, but still, have recently done books with that same traditional publisher, who's a bit smaller than the big five. So that's kind of a little bit about my journey and what that looked like. But again, it was not the standard. I was very fortunate.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was a strange, strange journey getting that email one day after work and being like, yes, I am interested, but are we sure that this is not a
This is
scam?
real.
So yeah.
That's incredible. That's kind of the dream, I think, for a lot of writers is
Yeah.
an agent and then a publisher coming to them directly and stuff like that. Because as we all know, writers who are listening to this or watching this, the querying process is very, very painful a lot of the time, and it's a long journey getting to that point. So if you can have someone approach you, then even better. I was speaking to a literary agent in the episode before this, or 2 episodes ago, and she was just talking to me about what that looks like on her end, about people approaching her and what she looks for, and how it's often quite a misunderstood industry as well. So it's good to have people talking openly about what those processes look like for them. Um, Shelby, you started writing online a number of years ago and writing in general a number of years ago. I want to ask, what was the sort of like loneliest kind of difficult portion of that journey. And I think for a lot of writers, we do write in isolation, and it can be quite difficult to keep going sometimes when maybe we feel like we're not getting seen or people maybe don't really care. And this is just kind of a general question for a lot of writers, and maybe you can help answer. How do you kind of push through those quiet, lonely periods of isolation towards the point where you have a community around you who gives you feedback and tells you that they love your stuff?
Yeah, I love this question. Two came to mind for me. The first is the first year I started sharing my work online, um, mostly because I did so anonymously. So I did not share my name, my face, anything online for that first year. What I write about is like self-esteem, self-doubt, and I had a lot of that. So that's what I was writing about and also experiencing. And so that was lonely because I was kind of growing an audience. It was on Tumblr
Mm,
that I was sharing my work, and this was 10 years ago now. And it was just lonely because I felt like I wasn't able to connect with anyone because I wasn't really being myself. And so that was lonely, but like a weird type of lonely because I had people reading my work, but I still didn't feel like connection at all and didn't feel like how I wanted to feel. It wasn't really rewarding. And I think
mm,
that's partially because I still wasn't like being kind to myself about my own writing. I was still very like harsh to myself. And then after I self-published my first book, I think honestly, like the first year, maybe year and a half, where things felt very slow and I had really big goals for myself and I wasn't hitting them. And I felt like I was in this like messy middle area where like I felt like I was doing all the right things and kind of building momentum, but like not what I wanted or what I dreamed of. So it just felt slow. It felt lonely, like you said. Like I wasn't really getting anywhere and was kind of spending all this time on something that maybe wouldn't end up going anywhere.
yeah,
And then it was really 3 or 4 years. Yeah, my first book was 2016, my second book was 2019, and it kind of took off in like 2020. So that's like 4 or 5 years of like pretty daily work. And I think so many authors do that as well. And authors have done it way longer than me and it has taken time to take off too. So I think, we all kind of experience that and have those periods of loneliness. And there's even been times in recent years, even though I've had a community where I felt disconnected and
mm,
felt like I need to change something up. I need to do something differently because I'm not feeling like I used to feel, or like the feeling of that having that audience has kind of faded and I don't feel connected anymore. So I think it never it's fully gone forever. Like I think it can come back even if you maybe are successful on the outside or like, outside looking in. So yeah.
Mm. Do you ever feel like you still suffer from imposter syndrome sometimes?
Yes, for
Mm.
sure. For
Mm.
sure. Yeah, I have a hard relationship with that like phrase because part of me is like, I always want to be working to be a better like version of myself. So I think that that can like give you the motivation to, but also sometimes I'm like, it'd be nice to not kind of be second guessing yourself all the time, you know? But yeah, I do struggle with that. It's definitely gotten a lot better than it used to be.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah, I think nothing ever really goes away for
Yeah.
creatives in general.
Yeah.
In terms of the more positive side of things,
Yeah.
what is obviously you do a lot of video stuff, you do a lot of writing, marketing in general, working with people one-on-one, that sort of thing. What's an example of something that you've done that you've really enjoyed in terms of marketing, that maybe like an experiment that you've run, something you've tried that was different you hadn't done before, that you just really, really found you can enjoy as a creative person and it really felt like play rather than like a chore?
Yeah, I like this question. Honestly, I think one of the most creative times was when I first started on TikTok and had never done any sort of video content before. And I really was treating it like an experiment. I didn't know what was working well. I was pretty early on in like TikTok days. I wasn't like one of the first people to join, but it was fairly early, so there wasn't a lot of evidence of what was working well for authors yet. So it was really an experiment for myself to figure out what kind of video content I could even create about poetry. And it ended up being very simple. I was just reading poems from my book and like showcasing the book. I wasn't even on camera. So it was very simple. But I remember like for a couple of years, that was the only type of video I was doing. And I would go into my closet and like record my voiceovers and like really get into the zone of being like a reader of poetry because I really didn't up until then. I wrote it, but never really read it out loud and like kind of presented it. So for me, that was very, very creative and very much a step outside of my comfort zone to have my voice online that much at the time.
What point did you start then showing your face in videos, and what was it like to make that step?
Yeah, I think it was a couple years after that, or maybe like 1 or 2 years after that. I had started, so whenever I first self-published my first book, I had like just barely started to like, a picture of me here or there. But video was something that I was terrified of. I did not want to see myself on video. I did not like the sound of my voice, all of those things. So I definitely put that off for a few years. But yeah, the transition to it, I think was awkward. And I think it will be if you haven't done it before. I didn't trust myself to like be able to talk without a script. So I would like write out what I wanted to say. I used like a teleprompter app on my phone that would play it.
Mm.
It took way longer than it would have if I had just talked because like I had to keep redoing it. The teleprompter would go too fast, like all of these things. So building that trust takes time and building it into a habit and not something that's very natural to me. But it was a very awkward transition, and I think my early videos show that. So you're welcome to go back and take a look and see how I've grown.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think not that I'm really progressed that much probably since the start, but my earlier videos are definitely pretty cringeworthy at times. But you have I think I'm right in saying you have an audience of maybe 500,000 followers at this point
Yeah,
online, which is incredible.
thank you.
What about that journey for you, Shelby? Would you say in terms of success, what changed throughout that time in terms of your approach? And then what did you retain about the way you approached how you created content or um presented yourself online or connected with your audience, would you say?
Yeah, good question. I think, okay, so a couple things. I think what changed to grow was consistency, which is kind of a cliche, but it really is true. Like you're going to get more success if you are showing up and practicing regularly because it really is like practice and figuring out what works for you and your audience. So that, and I was consistent for years before really growing a lot. I mean, to some it might be a lot. Like I had thousands of followers, but not like as many as now, hundreds of thousands. And so consistency, focusing on like one or two platforms. I still really only use Instagram, and then TikTok as like secondary. And in the beginning, I was trying to be everywhere. Like I was on Twitter at the time, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, then TikTok. So it was hard, Pinterest. So it was just hard to actually find success because I was spread so thin and not able to actually look at what worked, look at the data, and see like, okay, this post performed better. I was just posting, everywhere and trying to be everywhere,
Mm.
and get in front of as many people as possible, which there's benefits too, but it was really hard to grow. So that's the main thing. And then I think this secondary thing was like thinking of myself as a personal brand, which feels weird to say, but I was so like hidden the first couple of years. And it got easier to connect with people once I actually was like sharing stories about myself and talking about myself a little bit. You don't have to be on video if you don't want to, but like those sorts of steps really do help people connect with you. And I think, especially with like AI and bots and all of the things, especially on social media, that being able to say, okay, like I'm definitely following a human. This is a human
Yeah.
behind this account. Like it sounds silly, but there's so many now that aren't. So it's hard to tell. So whenever you can really like be yourself and show up a little bit, that really helped. And I definitely noticed a difference in terms of the feedback I was getting and the comments I was getting, the connection that I was getting whenever I got a little bit more personal to my, comfort level.
Mm. I'm so glad you mentioned the word branding because something I'm really interested in is how writers build their brands online and
Yeah.
how what that process looks like. I'm actually launching a cohort around this kind of time when this podcast episode will air, about writer branding. So it's really cool you mentioned that. Um, in terms of how important that is, Shelby, at this point, and you mentioned about AI, obviously, and there's going to be a lot of non-humans out there presenting themselves as real people. How do writers, in your opinion, like nurture and develop their brands online? Obviously, you talked about showing up authentically and that sort of thing and being consistent, but is there anything else writers maybe should be doing that they're maybe in general not doing right now to kind of nurture that connection with their audience through their brand?
Yeah, I think part of it is a little like businessy or analytical almost. Like it can still be creative, but I think one part of it is like the visual aspect of it, like deciding on like what your brand is going to look like. Whenever you think of a brand, so you might think of like a logo, colors, things like that. That's part of it. So like having that familiarity, that consistency with your audience, so that whenever you post something, your readers, your audience is like, oh, that is, a David post. Like that is who I'm following and like recognize you. And I think that really builds that consistency over time. So that can be like your colors, the fonts you use, keeping that consistent with maybe your book covers, the vibe overall. I know that there's writers who write in multiple genres, but trying to kind of find that like collective themes or imagery or vibes that whenever, again, like I go to your profile, I'm like, oh, this is a thriller writer for sure. And it feels cohesive and consistent. And then I think the other part of that is the human side of it, which is like how you speak to your community, the way that you talk, the way you write captions, the way you show up in, your content, the consistency of your work. Do you, you write consistently in your, books, like the same genre, or is it all over the place? Like, and that can be part of your brand too, is that you are multi-passionate and faceted and all of that too. So I think that there's different layers to it. But some examples that I give, like my favorite color is yellow. I have pops of yellow everywhere. And readers will message me like things that are yellow and be like, this made me think of you. And it's just like that little bit of familiarity that I know whenever, I don't own the color yellow, but when someone sees that, they think of me. And that's strong, like that's
Mm.
powerful. So that's all different elements of your brand that maybe
Mm.
writers don't think about as often.
It's fascinating. Did you deliberately choose yellow, or is it just purely because it's a color you like, or was there a reason for that?
Yeah, mostly because I love it and I knew that I wouldn't get tired of seeing it all the time in all of my branding. But it's also very joyful to me and happy, and that's kind of what I wanted to emulate in my content and when
I
people
love,
follow me. So yeah.
I love it. Yeah, and everything you said there, like you mentioned about your tone and the colors and your style and everything, and I can in my head straight away connect a few things with your brands just on the top of my head that I would
Yeah.
associate with you, and that's only from watching some of your videos really and some of your content. It's not I wouldn't say that I've been connected with you for a very long time online, but I know already from what you presented what to associate with you because your brand's very strong,
Yeah, thank
which
you.
is awesome. And Shelby, something else you are a big advocate for is about mental health in terms of showing up online. Um, so how do you balance that in terms of the pressure to be consistent and to show up online and to build your brand with protecting your own mental health at the same time?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is something I'm very passionate about, and I think that it overlaps really well because I think there's a lot of marketers who don't ever really talk about mental health and like the pressure and hustle like side of things. Um, and I think it's so important. So first of all, like take breaks. I don't know. I hear so often on social media, like if you take a break, you're done for. Like, don't take a break, don't pause your post it, all of that. Like, please take, go outside, step offline.
Touch grass.
So definitely that, like build in breaks at the beginning of the year. A few years ago, I started going through and like, here's my time off. Like we're building it in now and I'm not changing it.
Mm.
So that, pick something that works for you bandwidth wise too. Like I said, I was trying to be everywhere at once and I got so burned out. And so when I narrowed it down to 1 to 2 platforms, and I still am doing that, years later and not adding things because my bandwidth doesn't allow me to. And that's okay. And it's worked. So I think just picking like what works for you, the number of times a week you can show up. If you are someone who like hates social media, there's plenty of other routes to market. So you don't have to do things that you hate either. And sometimes like a weekly podcast or like guesting on other people's podcasts is really manageable for people, whereas sitting there and making graphic designs and posts is absolutely not. So kind of picking and choosing, and knowing that you don't have to do everything. Honestly, I think is the biggest learning for me because I was trying to do every single thing and I did burn out multiple times. So now it's been a while since I've burnt out, and I really think it's due to the boundaries that I've been able to put in place.
Mm. And I was saying before this conversation about how I was watching your most recent video on YouTube, and you talked about going on some breaks over the summer and things like that, and you took that time. And I think it was really cool the way you talked about how whenever you did dip back into work, it was just very brief, and you talked very clearly about the things that you did do, and whenever you were on those sort of those holidays essentially, but it was very the boundaries were in place, as you say, and then you just removed yourself from them again, and you just were able to relax and enjoy your time,
Yeah.
which is very difficult to do because I think, yeah, you're totally right. There is this culture of you have to be going at 100% all the time, and if you do stop, you're going to fall behind in some way, or the person who is around the same level as you is going to suddenly rocket ahead if you stop for like a day,
Yeah.
when really we're all in the same boat and we're working together and we help each other out, and it's a fun way to be as creatives, I think.
Totally.
Um,
I completely agree. Yeah, I always remind authors, and I think that they know this, like community over competition. There's no reader that only reads like one author. It's very rare, right? If they do, like, they might have their favorites, but like we always have the opportunity to find new readers, even if other readers, or other authors feel ahead of us, or, that competition or comparison is hard not to do, especially with social media and seeing other people's success. But we're all on our own path. And kind of like cheering and rooting for others, I think is the right mindset versus letting it get us down. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah. It's so hard to do because you do see the people succeeding and you're like, oh, I wish I could get to that point,
Yeah.
or they seem to overtake you sometimes in certain aspects. But you're right. Whenever you cheer for them rather than try to tear them down in some way, or even just ignore them, it's so much more powerful, and you can create those connections, and you make friends along the way too. Like I've done a bunch of podcast episodes with people who I never met before, and had them on and interviewed them here, and then they become friends afterwards, and that's been so powerful as well. And just for making the whole creative online space feel fun and enjoyable and something you want to come back to every day rather than feel like it's chore. Um, you've helped
Exactly.
you've helped Shelby, I think you mentioned before, 8,000 people or something like that,
Yeah, that's right.
find confidence in their marketing. Again, I was taking some of these things from your website earlier, reading some of your stuff. Um, and what would you say is a myth that's out there at the minute in terms of selling creative work that you wish that every writer or artist could sort of let go of at the minute? Maybe this a myth that's new or that's been around for a long time, but what kind of thing do you see that's pervasive out there?
Mm-hmm. I like this. I think one I've already touched on is like needing to be everywhere, needing to like never take breaks, all of that. So I won't touch on that again. But I
Mm,
think one of the biggest fears and roadblocks that I hear from authors is they like reach out, they know that they need to market, but mindset wise, they like just absolutely don't want to. It feels salesy, it feels self-promotional. And that can really be difficult to market when you're feeling that way, when you're feeling like you're being annoying or whatever you might be feeling. So I think that's one of the biggest myths, I guess, is what I could call it, just because we aren't being salesy for wanting people to like read our books and see our creative work. I think like a good mindset shift that takes time. Of course, any like mindset shift is going to take time. But if you just like close your eyes, imagine your dream customer, reader, whatever, like that is who we're marketing to. We're focused on those target readers, not random people from school or work or whoever who might see a post and think that you're, annoying or whatever, which isn't going to happen. But like that's what we think. That's what the stories we tell ourselves. And so I think that that mindset of just remembering that we're not here to market to our friends and family. We're here to find, our target people that we wrote this thing for. And we imagine them finding it through our work. And that's all we're doing is marketing, is just presenting it. We're presenting the facts. Here's what it's about. Here's why you should read it. Here's some reviews. And not like convincing people, not pulling people over the finish line to buy. We're literally just presenting information. And I think that that helps to think about it that way versus like, oh, I'm talking about myself and being self-promotional. Like no one is thinking about it as much as we are. So
Yeah.
I think embrace it and know that it takes time to like get over that mindset shift, But I think it's so worth it to embrace it and think about that target audience, and how much joy they'll have from finding your art.
Yeah, I love that answer so much. And any creatives or writers I talk to, that is like the number one challenge that they have is marketing themselves and talking about themselves in that kind of way and not
Yeah.
feeling that they're like and not they're annoying people and stuff. And it's so true. Like no one is going to read your stuff, or like one person in like 1,000 might read your stuff and think this is really annoying that they've written this. Everyone else will either not care or they'll really like it, and they might
Hmm.
reach a few people who it could be like a game changer for them, something they've maybe never heard of before, or they
Yeah.
just change the total their pathway going forward.
Yeah.
Um, Shelby, if you could give just a couple more questions, by the way, if you could
Sure.
give a new creative or writer or podcaster or YouTuber some advice, they only have maybe 30 minutes a week to spend on marketing, so they've got a very, very limited window.
Yep.
What would you say is like the number one thing that they should do that's going to really develop their personal brand and maybe build their audience and build their confidence as a creative?
Hmm. I would say one social media and one email list, because that's something that I wish that I had started way sooner than I did, is email marketing and just having like a close knit, the people who join that are typically like your most loyal readers or people who already love your work. And so I wish that I had started that, and that can be done in little time per week. I would say social media, probably like a little bit more time, especially in the beginning if you're new to it, because building, from zero does take time, but I do think that it's really worth it and a great way to grow your list at the same time. So you could focus your social media on like primarily growing your email list, and then using email marketing as like your primary marketing method. That's what I would do.
Yep, I agree. Email is one thing I wish I'd started so much earlier than I did.
Yeah. I feel like
It's,
everyone says that. So
yeah,
anyone
yeah.
listening, just start
Yeah,
it.
if you're
Just start
worrying,
it.
if you're wondering what to do, start your email list right now.
Yep.
Um, and I just want to talk briefly about big launches, just to sort of come towards the end, because you've successfully launched multiple books along the way, and I'm again as a writer, I'm always interested to hear whether other writers are doing that works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what's one strategy, Shelby, that has worked like gangbusters for you in terms of um finding success for your books? And then what is one thing that you would just absolutely never do again in terms of
Mhm.
promoting your writing online and and your
Okay,
books?
good question. The thing that has worked the best, I would say, has been doing some sort of pre-order campaign and really utilizing social media to kind of like warm up my audience, and get them ready for the release. So I'm talking about it months in advance, doing like the cover reveal, the title reveal, the release date, revealing bit by bit more and more about the book. And then I have the past few books done like a pre-order campaign, which is essentially kind of giving like little rewards for those who pre-order. With traditional publishing, I think that pre-orders are a little bit more relevant and like important if you have pre-orders. So that's something that I did. It would be like postcards that I would send to people who pre-ordered, like little things, nothing too major.
Mm,
And that works really well. And people feel like really connected and wanting that like little prize, that little personal touch. So that has been something that I would recommend and something that I'll continue doing.
mm.
And then, I'm trying to think of something that absolutely didn't work. I mean, what didn't work with my first book was the opposite of that, in that I didn't launch it at all. And I said, here it is. And then I was shocked by not getting sales. So that would be something I don't recommend doing. And I'm
Mm,
trying to think of something that I don't know. Um, I think sometimes, okay, yeah, one would be like, and sometimes this works for authors, so I don't want to say that it would never work. But there was a launch that I put a decent amount of effort into sending my books out to other people in the same niche who have like large audiences and things like that.
mm,
Thinking like, oh, if they post about it, like this could really help. And even if they did, it's still not the most effective way. I feel like it works better for like fiction, to be
mm,
honest. Um, Especially if they're like reviewing the book and sharing, but just like a post about like thanks for sending me this like really isn't going to do anything in terms of sales. So I think, not a huge expense, but I did spend some time and money sending out copies to a chunk of people, and I don't think that really leads to a return because people don't know me yet. They don't know my work, they don't trust me.
mm.
And so potentially leads to like some new followers and stuff, and maybe I can convert them over time, but not like a launch week strategy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going through a sort of mini launch week thing right now for a book that's coming out very soon. And the fun side of it is like creating some content and putting it out there and everything, and seeing people get excited. And then the sort of negative side of it is you don't really know exactly how well it's going to go. You're still hoping it's going to go really well, but you don't really know until it happens. And I think there's also this kind of thing sometimes where once we launch a book, we're sort of like, oh, that's it, it's done, and we just move on to the next thing. But really, we should just continue launching it and keep marketing as much as possible, and not worrying about annoying people in the process too, because there's always going to be someone out there who's never heard of your stuff, never come across your book before,
Yep,
and the next post could reach them. So, and that's
exactly.
great advice about the launch
Yeah.
week, especially. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I say the exact same thing. I call it like lifetime launch because it's never one and done. Like, don't forget about this, thing that you just worked so hard on after the first month, because
Mm.
there's so much time to pick things up, to try new marketing angles, to reach, the new readers that it hasn't found yet. I just had someone who took a break for 5 years. So they have this backlist of
Wow.
5 years. And in 1 month, they haven't released anything new, but they've just gotten back into consistently marketing and already saw like a big spike. I mean, not a ton, but like they sold, 10, 20 copies. They hadn't sold anything in 5 years. And just from getting consistently back into it, because readers don't care when a book came out, like they really don't. So there's a lot of hype around new releases, which is why they can tend to perform better. But then when we forget about them, they really don't have a chance. So we need to keep it going and keep marketing that backlist as well.
Yeah. Um, just to quickly touch on that, what have you done that's worked for you in terms of promoting past releases? So have you like posted new videos about them, or new content, or just send out an email like posting people in that direction?
Yeah, yeah. So I keep marketing my books years after they've been out. So the one that came out in 2019 that got republished, I still regularly am posting about it to give it the opportunity to find new readers. So yeah, that might be new videos or showcasing the poems inside, taking a picture of it on social media, like very simple. Or in my emails, I'll pick like one book to focus on usually. And since I'm not a fast releaser, I don't have 20 books to choose from. I do have to repeat myself and, recycle old books and bring them back to life. So that's definitely something that I'm doing on a regular basis in both emails and social media content.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just two more questions then. What have you got coming up in the next sort of few weeks or months, and what's your next sort of like big project you're working on?
Yeah, great question. I'm actually about to head to a writing residency in France for a few weeks to work
Wow.
on my next book. So I'm very excited for that. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't even know what I'm going to work on yet. So I'm kind of like just going to get there and see where my inspiration takes me. So we'll see TBD on the next book. But for marketing by Shelby, I'm working on a couple different things that I'll be launching in October and November. I always do some fun things in November for like Black Friday, different offers. And then in October, I'm launching or reopening, I should say, my membership, the Creatives Content Club, which is my marketing membership to learn about all of these things content marketing wise. And so that's only open to the public a few times a year. So that's when that will be. So
Nice.
that's what I'm kind of planning for the rest of the year. I'm very excited.
Awesome. I love the idea of doing a writing retreat in France. That's incredible. It'll be
Thank
really
you.
inspirational, I'm sure.
I'm excited.
Um, And last question then, Shelby. So, anyone who's listening to this today is interested in writing for a living. They want to find out how they can create those sustainable systems and processes to find ways to generate revenue from their words and hopefully do more fun stuff with their writing then if they're making money from it too. What is one piece of advice you would leave people with today who want to write for a living long term?
Yeah, I would think, or I would say, just sticking with it. Like there's going to be so many rejections. There always is in the writing world. There's going to be times where, like we talked about in the beginning, like it feels lonely. It feels like you're not making progress. That like messy middle area where it feels like you're doing everything you should be, but it's just not picking up. And I think that that's the moment where we have to keep going and where some folks decide that that's the end of the road and it's time to like give it up. But that's often the time where we're like right before the momentum starts to build. So I would say keep going, stay consistent. If it's, really something that you are passionate about and that you want to do, then let that, motivate you and keep you going, despite maybe the non-feedback that you're getting or not hitting the numbers that you want to reach. You won't reach them if you give up, right? So the best thing to do is keep moving forward.
I love it. What a fantastic line to end on today. Shelby, thanks so much. That was really cool conversation. Again, I think these podcast calls are so fun for me, even just as the interviewer and stuff. And I learned so much just from these chats. So, and this is really instructive, and I'm sure our listeners and watchers will also really have enjoyed this today. If you are listening or watching, make sure you go and check out Shelby on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else that she is, and check out her websites. And she is an expert when it comes to marketing, so definitely reach out if you're interested in that sort of thing. And make sure you buy her books as well, which are available online. But yeah, Shelby, thank you so much. And yeah, just so cool to meet you face to face, so to speak.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me and for the great questions. And I hope your listeners enjoyed the episode. I really had fun filming it. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.